Hi, hello to everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Belle. I have this little contemplative, mystical corner of the internet. I really like to post things about tarot and oracle cards on Instagram, and I like to share some of those ideas here on YouTube as well. And this evening, what I want to talk about is something I've been avoiding, but at the same time, it's something that's very close to my heart. I don't know if anyone will be able to relate to it. I know everyone's experience is really unique and individual. Sometimes there's common themes in different people's lives. Other times we have different experiences and it's a little bit hard to navigate and more difficult to understand each other. But I think it's still important to thoughtfully share ideas. So the title of this is basically about creativity, but it's much more specific than that, for my life at least. Okay, so this is what happened. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and it was by far, during those years, the worst experience of my life. But it's interesting, it wasn't just going through the suffering of bipolar disorder episodes. I have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1, so it's very stressful. It's like extreme feelings of stress and a complete lack of well-being. So that's really painful. It's emotionally and psychologically painful. But the other thing that just made it worse was the lack of understanding at that point. So this is like 2001 through 2004 through 2006. And I didn't feel like I had any support at all, really, from my family or my community. I didn't feel like it was very openly talked about, or even if it was like sucks to be you type attitude, which was maybe mostly unspoken and sometimes spoken with like snide comments in my family, mostly from my father. So it was just like no one was equipped to be at all mature about what I was going through when I needed help the most. And it was completely horrific. It changed, it completely changed my perspective on life, because I always fit in, which is a double-edged sword, I guess. When I was growing up, I always felt like I fit in, or whatever that means, right? And then all of a sudden, I felt like I was thrown into this role of the outcast, which, looking back, now I'm 37, and I feel like I've been thriving for the past couple years because I have a good relationship with my husband, Joey. We create a supportive environment for each other. Kind of lost my train of thought. So we created a mature environment. Oh my gosh, I totally lost my train of thought. But, oh, damn it. Okay, so I was just describing how when I was growing up originally, I felt like I really fit in. Although looking back, maybe I didn't fit in a way that was all that great. But then all of a sudden, with the diagnosis of bipolar disorder and going through those episodes of bipolar disorder, which were very extreme because I suffered from extreme mania that actually devolved into like complete psychosis. I couldn't tune in to what was going on in the environment, socially or whatever. So I was just like, I was really out of it. And what that felt like to me was just like extreme emotional distress, basically. So I went from fitting in, or at least I felt like that, which felt like on top of the world. It feels great to be like, oh, okay, everything in my life is perfect. And then towards the end of high school, I started feeling like I was getting a little bit depressed. And then when I was 19, all of a sudden I was thrown into this role of experiencing mania for the first time, basically suffering from bipolar disorder type 1. And in those years, at that time and a little bit after that, all of a sudden I feel like I'm a total outcast, which is a new feeling for me. So what I was trying to say in the first part of the video is that looking back, it's kind of good to have both experiences to have a mixture of experiences where you feel like you fit in sometimes and you feel like you're part of this community. It's a good feeling, but if you experience what it's like to be an outcast, then you can be more compassionate, because you're like, oh my God, like, I don't know, I felt like I was nice to people, but I was like, I didn't go the extra mile necessarily to make everyone feel included. So that's really important. And having the experience of this wide range of different feelings socially, obviously it's helped me be a more compassionate person. I really, really feel that, because I've had to have more compassion for myself. And that, you know, that's great. It's not saying that the experience of bipolar disorder episodes is great. That's horrible, and I literally wouldn't wish it on anyone, like not even like villains in a movie. I wouldn't wish any of the negative effects of bipolar disorder on anyone. It's horrible. I feel like people at least deserve to be in their right mind to face what they're facing, and that's when you have extreme episodes of bipolar disorder, or I don't know that much firsthand, but it seems like in different types of schizophrenia, it also seems like in that case, wow, okay, I can tell I'm talking about things that are important to me, because I keep losing my train of thought, like it's like overload emotionally almost to talk about it, but I think it's really good to talk about it. So I was trying to say that, wow. Huh. Wow. Okay, I'm back. I'm gonna have to learn how to edit. Okay. So, I've been talking about my experience, to a certain extent, the shorthand version, the abbreviated version, about how the worst years of my life were when I was suffering from bipolar disorder, and at the same time, I felt like an outcast because I did not feel the love and compassion that I needed to feel in order to get better. And the first time I had the love and compassion that I really needed was when I met my husband, Joey, and that was at the beginning of 2008. So basically, from 2001 through all of 2007, my life just sucked. And there were some good things that happened, but I was in complete survival mode, and it was horrible. I was in emotional distress. I wasn't able to get the help I needed for emotional distress. Even, I went to therapists and doctors, and they were not very compassionate people. I don't know what everyone else's experience has been with psychiatrists and psychologists, but my experience, for the most part, has been pretty negative. Obviously, it's not the worst thing in the entire world, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like getting, it's like, okay, so the metaphor would be, you have suffered this traumatic injury physically, and you get help, but not all of the help. You're still in pain. So it's the same thing with mental health. Sometimes you get the most extreme stuff supposedly dealt with, but then personally, you're just a wreck. And I don't know if it's improved now, but it may have improved in a lot of ways, because I know past couple of years, people have been really proactive about talking about lots of different issues and being more open about things. But it was just horrible, and like I'm saying, I didn't get the help I needed ever in that amount of time, from 2001 all the way through the end of 2007. And then my husband Joey and I have, fortunately, we're both on the same wavelength when it comes to the type of environment we want to have that's loving and compassionate, and we can support each other. And it's not always completely perfect, obviously, because we're not robots, but it pretty much is perfect. It's really important to both of us. And if nothing else, I know I've been learning a lot. Joey is basically the best person I've ever met. He's a very compassionate person, just it seems like naturally, and it's also something that he values. I can make a different video about Joey because he's amazing. I mean, everyone thinks their spouse is amazing, but mine really is. And so one of the main themes about this video that I'm making right now goes back to the original theme of creativity. Okay, the reason it does is because one of the worst feelings in the entire world is saying something that's important to you, and then cricket, it's not understood. And this is magnified when you're suffering from a mental health issue, because you're like, okay, you're like so much emotional pain. You're like, and people are like, oh God, that sucks. Like, put that back, you know? You're trying to, so the message I got during those years from 2001 through 2007, the message that I got was basically like, I'm an outcast. Don't express yourself. Don't be vulnerable about your emotions. It was horrible. It was like completely dehumanizing. It was completely horrible. And even though it could have been worse, obviously, if I was in the 1950s and getting even worse medical treatment than I did, but it was just horrible. And my point is, in the creative process, you have to express yourself and you have to be vulnerable. So here I am going through all this trauma, and it's like, don't express yourself. You know, you're a freak. Like, you're an outcast. And this is, no one's saying this to me. Maybe occasionally there's a little snide comment, like I was saying here and there. But mostly it's an attitude. And the way I personally felt after going through bipolar disorder episodes was that, like, oh, I better go back to just trying to get by fitting in, because it's not worthwhile to be myself. It's not worthwhile to express myself. It's not worthwhile to be emotionally vulnerable, because I'm going to be basically punished for that. Because that's how it felt when I was depressed, and then I started getting worse and worse and worse, and then I'm manic, and then I'm psychotic. And then it's like, oh, it sucks to be psychotic, so fuck you, and take this medicine and try to be normal now, even though none of the issues were ever dealt with. Because I didn't have good psychiatrists and good psychologists for the most part. My parents aren't very mature. That was one thing I was going to say is, like, obviously everyone has trouble with their family, unless they're, like, in complete sainthood with everyone. But, so I'm not going to totally, obviously some people have families that are good and bad, and most people's are a mixture, right? But, let's come back around again to the fact of not being understood. And so here I am with all this baggage that's, like, dehumanizing baggage. And then now I'm on this creative path, so it's so difficult to be emotionally vulnerable and express myself, because the worst feeling in the world, among others, is having something really important to you to share, and then expressing it in some way, and then having people completely reject that. It's the worst feeling in the world. I don't know. I know there are others, but in terms of this day and age and this type of social structure that we have, expressing something vulnerable and then having people completely shut that down and basically saying, like, you're an outcast. Like, I don't want to cuss too much. I don't know if you're allowed to on YouTube, but, like, fuck you. You suck. You're an outcast. And so I got the message loud and clear that it's not safe to be emotionally vulnerable or to express my true self. And in fact, that will be devalued and that will be punished. So, I wanted to talk a little bit also about extreme bipolar disorder. Like, I feel like I've suffered. Obviously, you do need help, right? You need to feel understood. So that leads me to a book recommendation. This book, I haven't even read the whole thing, but the parts that I have read so far are really good. I found this through someone else's book recommendation on YouTube. It's by John Weir Perry. I think he was popular or working in the 1970s, maybe. I'm not sure, but the book is Trials of the Visionary Mind, Spiritual Emergency, and the Renewal Process. So it's really important to me to get this message out that he talks about in this book. When people are psychotic, they don't need to be shut down. So I think in normal or like mainstream psychiatry, I don't know if this is still true or not, but I think the understanding that what they think is that you should just tell people that they're wrong. Like if someone starts saying things that don't make sense, either from bipolar disorder or something else, mainstream psychiatry is like, oh, like shut up and take medicine. And even if people need medicine, they don't need to be told to shut up, right? So luckily, people like John Weir Perry know that what you need is compassionate listening space. No matter what you're talking about, even if you can't totally be understood by anyone, you need that space for being heard and feeling like someone can hear you with compassion. And there are probably more people these days who can be in that role, who can be a good psychologist or psychiatrist. But that's not what I experienced. I never, a couple times I've had a pretty good therapist and occasionally a good psychiatrist. But I've never experienced being psychotic and having a compassionate person to listen. I really wish I had, because I think it would have helped. So that's an important message for me. Our important theme, an important idea is that it's okay to have crazy ideas, and it's okay to not be understood by anyone. So I want to clarify that, because the message that I got for years was that if you're not understood clearly, if you're not understood clearly, you're going to be punished and you're going to be shut down and you're going to be rejected. But I want to clarify that for myself and for anyone else who's interested, that that's not true. You can say things that don't make sense. It's okay. And what you need is compassionate listening. And maybe you'll be understood eventually, or maybe you'll never be understood. But you should be allowed to have crazy ideas, and you should be supported. As long as you're not hurting yourself or others, go ahead and have the craziest ideas you can possibly think of. It's cool, just be yourself. So that, I literally needed to read that here to realize that not everyone is a total jerk about mental health. Which is what I basically felt like I faced. And like I'm saying, obviously in the 1950s when, literally psychiatric hospitals were, literally bad from what I've read online, I didn't experience that, which would have been even worse. But I didn't get the help I needed. I got a little bit of help for the extremeness of what I was going through. Through medication, but I never got the personal, emotional, psychological help that I needed. And I had to seek that out myself through my personal relationship with my husband, Joey, which is fine. Obviously, you need real relationships in your life that are compassionate and supportive. And that's, in many ways, just as good or has its own role to play along with therapy and along with medical assistance. If it's compassionate medical assistance that's non-judgmental. So, creativity, being vulnerable, even if you're not understood, it's okay. So that's what I'm trying to get through to myself, because I want to rewrite those feelings that I have, that I'm going to be rejected or completely misunderstood. Plus, even if I am misunderstood or completely rejected, I want to be a strong enough person now as an older person. I want to be strong enough so that I can support myself and call on the people who do understand me, hopefully. Even if not everyone does. So, big topics, and they're really important. And I think it's good to clarify these things and to be open about it. Because one of the worst things is to feel like you should be ashamed of something that's actually really important to you, or that you should be ashamed of an emotion or an experience that was pivotal in different ways. Yeah. So that was the first book. There was some of the themes I want to talk about, which we've covered. And this is the first book by John Weir Perry, which I haven't read all of, but I recommend. There are 2 more books along these lines that I really like. Another good book is by Paris Williams, who's a psychologist, it looks like. And his book is called Rethinking Madness. and the tagline is "Towards a Paradigm Shift in Our Understanding and Treatment of Psychosis." So it's along the same lines. The only thing that's a little bit different for me is that I feel like I do at this point need to take, oh, here's my cat Jenny. I feel like I do need to take medication in my case. I know a lot of people who are anti-mainstream psychiatry think it's better to go without medication at all. And in my case, I don't feel that way. I feel like I need personal assistance and I need emotional support in a real way. But I feel like for the paradigm that I'm in, I do need to take medication, and it's working out fine for me in a lot of ways, just to cover that, keep that base covered medically. But obviously everyone's unique, so I just wanted to mention that because I know there's there's different ideas out there. Hey, Jen. So this is Rethinking Madness by Paris Williams, and Jenny's getting stuck on the carpet. She'll be okay though. I haven't read all of this either, but I like the idea of it. And I was thinking, like, just by having these books on my shelf, I feel like I am symbolically supporting myself and being open to ideas that are supportive of everything that I've been through. And then there's this one. I haven't read that much of this one either. It's called The Spiritual Gift of Madness. And then under it says, The Failure of Psychiatry and the Rise of the Mad Pride Movement. So there's so much stuff online that you can read, obviously. This book is by Seth Farber. So I'm not going to paraphrase or try to summarize that much. But basically, it's really cool when you go through a bad situation, negative experiences, to realize that there are so many different perspectives out there, and you don't have to be stuck in just one mind frame about something that was traumatic. There are different ways to think about things, and it's not embarrassing to need help. Everyone needs help in different ways at different times in their life. And actually now, after going through all these different things that were traumatic in different ways, one positive thing I've learned is that when you need help, you need help. Because when I was psychotic, you can't help yourself when you're psychotic, so you need help. You're just like, help me. You don't even say help me. That's how out of it you are and how much you need help. That's how extreme it is. You can't even ask for help. You're just out of it. So I guess, like, one thing I'm trying to say is that when you're in that extreme of psychosis and mania, the treatment that you get is very harsh. And I guess you're very emotionally sensitive anyway, but you really need, like, this complete love and compassion. And if you're in the hospital, most hospitals maybe for mania or something extreme, mental health wise, often the surroundings are very harsh, and it's incredibly painful when you're emotionally sensitive because you're going through something really difficult, and then you're thrust into a very harsh environment like the psychiatric hospital. It's even more painful. It's horrible. Like, one of the issues with mental health, I think people can't necessarily imagine, if they've never gone through it, they cannot imagine how painful it is psychologically and emotionally. I don't want to try to, like, do all these gross metaphors or creepy metaphors to describe how painful it is, but just, I'll leave it at that. It's this heightened emotional sensitivity plus a harsh environment. It's just more and more layers of trauma, basically. And obviously, hopefully it's getting better in different ways, as people like the authors of these books are speaking up, or in the case of John Weir Perry, people are going back and finding his ideas, hopefully. So this is part 1 of this video, and even more about creativity is coming next, because I also wanted to talk about my novella and how being vulnerable through fiction has been interesting for me the past few years. So, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed a couple of the themes, just in terms of maybe thinking of your own ideas and finding something thoughtful or thought-provoking. And I will see you in part 2 of this video. Thank you.